Hey guys, I'm back. This video may take a little bit longer, but because it's going to be, and it's a little bit different, but I hope you enjoy it. I was born on December 12th, 1986, and this is my birth story. My mother had preeclampsia, so they had to deliver me what would have been 3 months early. Instead of being born on March 1st, I was born on December 12th. This is the description my dad gave of me when he first saw me. I weighed 2 pounds 7 ounces, 1,100 grams for anybody in metric, if anybody cares, and I was 14 inches long, which I guess is pretty long if you're 3 months early, so I was just very long. I am not a tall person though. My hair was the color of caramel, which makes sense because my mom originally had red hair. If you see the picture earlier in my video, she had red hair. She doesn't now, but she did when she was about my age. My fingers were the size of matchsticks, so if you can picture matchstick. And I have very long fingers. I still have very long fingers. And my thighs were the size of my dad's thumb. And when I think about that, that's crazy. My head was the size of a tennis ball. Think about a tennis ball and the size of that. That's absolutely crazy. And following that description, he says I was moved to the ICU, intensive care unit, or the NICU for all the preemie babies. This is my next, the next description I wanted to show in this video is just a comment that my dad made about the size of the preemie diapers, which, if you think about premature babies, they're little, and the diapers are little. I was so little that the preemie diapers didn't even fit me. They went from my bottom to all the way up to my armpits, which was essentially half my body. And I'm still that little. My pants pretty much still fit me that way, depending on the cut. So when I think about that, how stuff fits me because I'm so short-waisted, I think that's kind of funny. Then my dad mentions about me just being in the NICU, and I was on a breathing machine, which is typical for a lot of premature babies, but take this with a grain of salt because it was in the 80s, so the technology has obviously changed a lot in 20-some years. I was on a breathing machine called an oscillator, and I'll post a picture here. And that may not be the breathing machines they use now because they have different technology now, so it'd be interesting to compare what I was put on as a preemie in the 80s versus a preemie maybe in the 2000s or 2010s. So I think that'd be an interesting thing to research and look up. So if anybody watching this wants to check that out and post what they find in the comments, I think that'd be pretty cool. Here are a few more details about my birth specifically as far as time. I must have been born on a Friday because my dad mentions that the following day, a few days after my birth was a Sunday, and they had just gone to church the day before. And he got a call really, really early in the morning, which for anybody who has ever had a preemie, and I've heard several stories, it's very nerve-wracking for the parents. And that the doctors and nurses called and said my lung had collapsed. And they had to reinflate it, which on a 2-pound baby is difficult to do. And I actually, when I was a kid, I still had very, very faint scars from that procedure, but me as an adult now, you cannot see them for the most part. And later that night, I had a brain bleed. It was a very severe brain bleed, and it affected pretty much my entire brain. And I'll go into more detail about that without getting too technical. If I have any technical jargon, I'll shoot it up on a screen here. I really like my dad's response to finding out that their 2-day-old child had such a severe brain injury, and he was just praying. My family are Christian, and we believe that God can do some major miracles. And after he got that news from the doctors, he prayed, and he knew that children with brain injuries were severely handicapped, and they were expecting me to be paraplegic or quadriplegic, but he prayed for me to be healthy. He prayed for me to be independent, intelligent, and that I could testify to what God would do in my life. And I believe that prayer really has come to pass over the past 30 years, and that really makes me smile every time I read it and hear about it. So the next part of my story I consider equally important as all the physical things that happened, but all the spiritual things that happened within me and to my family. The next day on a Monday, I believe, I was anointed by the elder of the church, Worldwide Church of God, which was my parents' church until I was 14, when we changed to the church we go to now. And this is in accordance to James 5:14 and 15. Following my anointing, I improved very quickly. A week after my lung collapsed and my brain bleed, I was taken off the respirator that I had been on. I had begun ingesting breast milk for the first time, and I didn't have any breathing tubes or anything at that point, and I was given a bottle for the first time, which was about 10 cc's, 1/3 of an ounce, which for a preemie is a lot. If you watch any medical documentaries on premature babies, they don't need a lot, but they need to keep being fed frequently so they can keep growing and hopefully be healthy boys and girls, which my parents obviously wanted for me. But like many preemies, I did have a humongous setback. I had some stomach swelling, and the doctors thought this was bad. They thought I had an intestinal infection, which was essentially fatal. Essentially, your colon rots away, and then you're fed intravenously until you die, essentially. Without getting too technical, that's the long and short of it. So on January 7th, I was anointed again. And that's the cool thing about healing. Keep going at it. Something will happen. So, and any believers out there watching this, you know what I'm talking about. The next day, I had a series of x-rays done, and they just were essentially going through my GI tract and seeing what was going on, and nothing was wrong. My bowels were large, but nothing was particularly abnormal. And then I had some swelling in my head. This brings me to the next big part of my story, which could have potentially drastically affected my life. And the doctors considered putting a shunt in my head. So, and I've heard about people with various conditions and disabilities that have shunts, and it's it's just another piece of medical equipment, and it can be tricky and make your life for the whole nother set of problems and things you have to look out for. Between all this, I had several lumbar punctures, which I have heard nothing but terrible things about. If I think they're hard on an adult, I'm sure they're terrible for these little preemies. And, you know, it's just kind of, I had very faint scars, some of which are still visible on my hands and feet, where they stuck all these needles in. I probably don't have the scars on my back from wherever they would put these in, because those needles are very thin, so they probably wouldn't leave any scars on my body now. But I have several old scars from blood work that they did when I was a baby. So while the doctors were talking of putting a shunt in my head, my parents had the church pray for me, not for the first time, and they had me anointed for a third time. And then everything just kind of snowballed, and the swelling went down. I was off respirators, breathing tubes, feeding tubes. My mother began teaching me how to nurse, and the swelling in my head went down as well of its own accord. They didn't really need to do anything, and so everything was returning to normal. And after all of that, I came home after 50 days in the hospital on my dad's 31st Now, most of you watching this will ask, why did I put this on my channel when it has nothing to do with service dogs? And I put this on my channel because it's part of who I am and what my story is. And I really would love to be able to go back and see the nurses and doctors that were with me when I was born and show them that I'm not so profoundly disabled. I can talk, I can feed myself, I can take care of myself very well for the most part. I am very independent. I have a college degree. And I would love to be able to go into that hospital and be the person they don't expect. So that always kind of like gives me a go me type of feeling when I think about that. And I feel like having a service dog after all this time is just another tool, another thing to help me be more independent. And that is something that makes me very excited. I love the idea of being that independent and just being able to do things on my own and not have to constantly call somebody or text somebody for help because I need something. Yes, I'm still disabled, but I can do all these things that doctors and nurses said, oh, she'll never be able to feed herself. She'll never be able to talk. We don't know how much she'll be able to walk. And I've taught myself how to walk on a set of crutches within 6 months with mostly minimal assistance. And that's something that I really, that means a lot to me. And I wish people would see, whoever's watching this video, and if my parents are watching, hi Mom, hi Dad, you know, that is one of the reasons I want a service dog, is to be more independent and to be the person and the woman that my dad prayed about, you know, and that's something I'm like, let's go, full steam ahead. I realize this video is probably going to be extremely long, particularly with all my inserts. And I'm trying to really make up for not posting a video last week because this video was taking so long to film, because I had to wait till my dad found the document that he originally wrote down and transcribed. So I'm going to try to get a few more videos up. By the time this video goes up, I may possibly have another video up directly relating to trying to get a hold of the service dog agency to see what's going on. So we'll see where that goes. I'll probably film something earlier next week depending on how my time goes. So until next time, this is Service Dog Diaries, signing off.